It showed a couple of things. One, it was safe. So of the 45 people that got some dose of this vaccine, it showed relative safety in those individuals. And then on a smaller fraction of these individuals, 8 of them, it showed that they were able to produce these antibodies, the protective antibodies, that would hopefully demonstrate that people would be able to fight off infection if they were exposed to COVID-19. As you pointed out, though, I mean, it's good news. It's great to hear progress, but this is still very, very early. This is a phase 1 clinical trial. It just looks for safety, essentially. And what we're really looking for is the results of the much larger trials, these phase 2 trials and then phase 3 trials, where you have hundreds and hundreds and ultimately thousands and thousands of people enrolled in a study, so you can actually see, does the vaccine work, and still look to see if the vaccine is safe when it's used on a much larger population.
So those would be the next steps to watch for. But I guess, temper our enthusiasm is pretty much what we should keep in mind as we look at this.
Absolutely, but it's still good news. I mean, and I like your point as well. There are about 100 or more than 100 different vaccines in development. This is fantastic. I mean, we know that most of them are going to fail. Probably 2 to 5% might be successful. So the more sticks we have in the fire, the better. And this is certainly some very good news. And we're working with companies. Many of these are companies that have a long track record of success developing vaccines and doing vaccine research. So hopefully they're going to be successful here. But we should be prepared for disappointment, and we should also be prepared that this is a long road, and it's going to take months and months and months, and maybe even longer before we see results in larger trials where we can actually determine if the vaccine is protective in humans and how long is it protective and to what extent it's protective. These are some big questions that need to be answered, and we'll hopefully have some answers as 2020 progresses.
Still pretty stunning speed at which all of this is advancing, even though these are still early days. The big jaw dropper out of Washington, you were maybe listening to Katie Simpson report. I was talking to her about how the U.S. president yesterday told reporters that he's been taking hydroxychloroquine, this anti-malaria drug, notably anti-malaria, some other uses as well, but preventively for a week and a half in consultation with his physician. Now, what is your reaction to that?
So to date, we don't have evidence suggesting that hydroxychloroquine will be an effective treatment or prevention for a COVID-19 infection. There are some smaller studies and some evidence that's out there that are, from imperfect studies that most of them show that hydroxychloroquine doesn't really do anything in a COVID-19 infection. There's been a few shreds of data saying maybe it's protective. Most say it's not. But in terms of having the large, well-designed clinical trials available, we don't have those results available. They are coming soon. I think the key thing here is we don't know whether this works or not. And of course, like anything else, drugs have side effects, and especially this one. They can have neurologic side effects. They can have cardiac side effects. No one should be taking this medication unless it's prescribed by a physician. And we've heard of cases of people stockpiling this drug and taking this drug. That's dangerous. Nobody should be doing this unless it's prescribed by a physician for a particular purpose.
I think that's a really important point to make, because the president said yesterday, I'm not going to get hurt by it, but people could be hurt by it. People have died from those cardiac side effects that you pointed to, notably in France, and there have been all sorts of warnings. So there may be people, is this not conceivable, Dr. Bogoch, that say, well, the president's taking it preventively, maybe I will too, but he's going to be monitored a whole lot more closely than the average citizen is just popping pills at home.
No, I completely agree, and we certainly would not want to cause any harm, and we would not want anyone to say that exact same thing. If it's good enough for the president, then I should be taking this as well. Absolutely not. I mean, there are some people should be taking this medication for other reasons, and it's prescribed by a physician, and you're monitored by a physician throughout that time, and that's important. But nobody should be taking this medication without a prescription by a physician and close monitoring, because there are well-known side effects to this medication, just like any other medication. You wouldn't just randomly start taking, pills that you think are helpful for you. We have to be very mindful about what are the risks, what are the benefits, and what are the alternatives of taking that particular medication. So definitely don't take that medication unless it's prescribed by a doctor and you're monitored by a doctor.
I'd like your take on our top story today, and that is the reopening, Dr. Bogoch. It continues. Ontario into phase 1, Saskatchewan, British Columbia into phase 2. So a lot more stores opening, a lot more services opening. And in the words of Dr. Bonnie Henry out in British Columbia, we have to move carefully and stay alert that this time is one of new anxiety and concern. Because of what these next 2 weeks can tell us, can you explain what we're going to be watching for in these next 2 weeks and why they're sort of critical importance?
Oh, absolutely. So the big concern is if people are out and about and they're not practicing physical distancing and they're not adhering to hand hygiene, and some of the businesses aren't set up for success in terms of, enabling safe customer experiences or safe experiences for their employees. Yeah, we're going to see additional cases. We're going to see a spike in COVID-19 cases, and we can expect to see that in the next 2 to 4 weeks. Of course, if businesses are set up for success, if people are still mindful about what we should be doing and practicing physical distancing and hand hygiene, and of course wearing masks if we're clustered together and not able to practice physical distancing in enclosed settings, and if we do it right, we won't see that. And the real metric here to watch for is the number of new cases per day. Most provinces are really set up, at least now we're set up, where we can provide much better access to diagnostic testing. There's going to be a lag time. There's going to be a lag of 2 to 4 weeks before we would see a signal. But if we start to see more new cases per day, that's a worrying sign, and that's a sign that we need to do more. And maybe it's not appropriate to continue with the phase 2 and phase 3 opening up of the economy, and maybe it's a measure that we need to do better on phase 1. And in a worst case scenario, maybe if it's really bad, maybe we even actually need to scale back a little bit and sadly clamp back down with some of these major public health restrictions. If there's a significant, unacceptable high number of new cases of COVID-19.